So without further ado, please give a warm welcome to Catherine Rodriguez.
Good morning. What my introducer did an excellent job. What he failed to mention, and I'll just tell you now, is that I actually met my husband here at a YAF conference when I was an intern. So, fun fact about me, and fun fact for all of you that are here. It's a pleasure to be with you all this morning. I hope you'll stay awake. I know you guys have had a big week. The speakers have been really awesome. So, I would like to start this morning by telling you all a story. It begins with the first week of college. The rite of passage everybody in this room knows as student orientation. New freshman students are gathering in the auditorium for a required presentation titled Terry's Fabulous Alcohol Program. Before you can even vaguely contemplate what that might entail, you are taken for a ride through the myriad of alcohol-related situations you're expected to get in as a college student. You pick up your jaw from the floor just long enough to comprehend that the director of your residence life office is instructing you on how to have safe sex while intoxicated. This particular lesson included beer goggles, bananas, and I'll let you put the rest together for yourself. The school was a small liberal arts college for women, and that student was me. Many of you in this room have undoubtedly already faced similar situations on your campus. Some of you are blessed to attend conservative schools, but the majority of you probably had a very similarly rude awakening that I have just described. Before I left for college, I really didn't have a thought one way or the other what the atmosphere on campus was going to be. However, after attending a few orientation sessions like the one I've just described, and going through the first couple weeks of classes, I had gotten a really good feel for what I was in for. After one particularly infuriating class, one in which a professor went on for what seemed like forever trying to pass off his leftist opinion for fact, I remember picking up the phone and calling my dad. He's the one I get most of my conservative leanings from. I remember saying, "These professors are so weird, Dad. I thought college professors were supposed to be smart. If they're smart, why aren't they conservative?" He laughed. He thought that was very funny. He obviously knew ahead of time what I was just learning. So having these crazy liberal professors was one thing. And trust me when I say that there were many of those, as I'm sure there are many at your schools. But encountering the feminists on campus was quite another experience altogether. Now remember, I was at a women's college, which is a breeding ground for radical feminism, similar to how a leftover fridge container breeds disease. But you don't need to be at a women's college to experience the feminazis at their finest. I had never seen such a large number of man-haters in my entire life. To say I felt like a fish out of water was a huge understatement. I was certainly all for equality. Who could be against that? But that's just about where the similarities between the feminists and me ended. It seemed that everywhere I looked, there were professors and students, administrators alike, praising liberal feminism, talking about how great the National Organization for Women was. They were also usually whining about how conservatives want to take away their contraception and reproductive rights, which, if you don't know, that's fem code for abortion. According to Now, all of us ladies are victims of social oppression. We require government to hold all of you men back and give us special treatment to get ahead. Now, before I go any further, this is not just a speech about women. Guys in the room, this affects you too. So make it through my speech. Don't fall asleep yet. Here are some women who are probably familiar to all or most of you. I want to start by taking a look back at what the original feminists, like Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Lucretia Mott, actually believed, actually stood for. So how many of you have heard of Alice Paul or Susan B. Anthony? Probably most of you. Yeah, good. Our schools are doing something. Awesome. So how many of you all have heard of Hannah More? Probably not as many. Hannah More was the original feminist, and I say that in the best sense of the word. She was even more popular than Mary Wollstonecraft. She's the one the feminists like to hold up as their big historical figure. It's also important to note that she outsold Jane Austen in her day. This was a big deal, and probably most of you don't know anything about her. If you had to compare Mary Wollstonecraft and Hannah More, you could say that Mary Wollstonecraft is the mother of modern feminism, feminism as we see it. Very egalitarian in nature, very focused on equal outcomes. Hannah More is more along the lines of what many conservatives, and probably many of you in this room, would define feminism as if you could do it all over again. That is, it's an appreciation of women as equal under the law, but accepting that they have very different but equally valuable natures and contributions. Despite Hannah More's historical fame and intellectual contributions, she is largely left out of the feminist canon. This is due to one simple reason. More believed that, in modern terms, women don't need to act like men to get ahead. All right, so let's fast forward a bit to the suffragettes that most of you are familiar with. You've probably heard of some or all of the ladies that I mentioned in your high school history classes or your college history classes. These women were unique, they were brave, and they rightly believed that women should have a say in the form of a vote, and they should have protection under the law. It's not an understatement to say that the work of these ladies in securing the God-given rights of women is one of the greatest achievements of Western civilization. The truth is, suffragettes and feminists have little to nothing in common. Suffrage activists like Alice Paul and Susan B. Anthony were very family-oriented. They weren't out to liberate women from being women. Rather, they embraced their femininity. They saw it as an asset, and they believed that women offered a unique and valuable perspective because of it. In contrast to the suffragettes, the feminists of the 1960s were decisively anti-family, very pro-abortion, anti-male, here's where you guys come in, and they saw home and family life as a trap, a tool of that dreaded patriarchy to suppress us all. This is Betty Friedan, if you're not familiar with her. In her book, The Feminine Mystique, which was published 50 years ago this year, Betty Friedan, known as the mother of third-wave feminism, went so far as to call home life a comfortable concentration camp. She even argued that raising children alone stunted the growth of women as an individual. She just didn't seem to understand how women could find any satisfaction or happiness in a marriage or in a family. So there's only one logical conclusion to this. Women are oppressed. That's the answer. Society is to blame, according to Betty Friedan's third-wave feminists. If you can't read what it says, this is an old advertisement. This healthy, normal baby has a handicap. She was born female. Friedan and her followers took to the streets to protest this oppressive patriarchy. When you think about it, it's not really any wonder why so many women were attracted to this movement. Equality is a nice word. It's a good word. It's hard to argue with. They wanted equality in the workforce, equal pay for equal work. Who could say no? But during the 1970 Women's Strike for Equality March in New York City, some other things began to show. These are some of my favorite pictures. If you'll see, This one on the bottom left, don't cook dinner, starve a rat today. It's pleasant. By this time, Friedan had already founded the National Organization for Women, otherwise known as NOW, in 1966. According to the NOW website, their mission was to take about action to bring equality for all women. While it can certainly be agreed that women deserve equal protection, equal opportunity, the feminist movement wanted to extend their mission to primarily include abortion, homosexuality, among other things. And they wanted to radically alter society and culture in order to accomplish this equality as they envisioned it. So we've already identified Betty Friedan as the mother of third wave feminism. This is what we typically understand feminism to be. So let's take a look at some other feminist thinkers of the 60s and 70s. This is one of my favorites. This is Andrea Dworkin. She believed that the idea of man and woman was forced upon us all through social oppression. In her view, it was a feminist job to abolish this understanding. According to her book, Woman Hating, and I put a picture up there because somebody didn't believe me once that that book really existed. So here it is, it's real. She said, we should all strive to be 100% liberated, androgynous beings. That means do away with any notion of male or female. I've included a picture to illustrate it for you. Is it a man? Is it a woman? I don't know. Even traditional marriage and family were not immune from feminist attacks. In 1969, a feminist sociology professor at the University of Chicago wrote that the institution of marriage is the chief vehicle for the perpetuation of the oppression of women. Isn't that a nice cover? This is Robin Morgan. She founded Ms. Magazine, which you might be familiar with. It's a very feminist left-wing magazine. Robin Morgan even went so far in 1970 to say that marriage was a slavery-like practice, and we can't destroy the iniquities between man and women until we destroy marriage. So are you following me here? Let's take a minute. So how do we make the leap from getting the vote to destroying marriage? I wish I could say that the confusion stops there and it all starts making sense from here on out, but it doesn't. These feminists even believe that motherhood itself was an unthinkable obstacle to feminist victory. French feminist Simone de Beauvoir even said that women shouldn't even have the choice to stay at home and raise children. They shouldn't even have the option, because if they did, too many would make that choice. Of course, how could the feminists truly achieve equality as they envision it if women decided that they wanted to give in to their desires to have children, stay home with them if they can or choose to? Clearly, this is a huge distraction to the mission. So by this point in history, we're talking the 1960s and 70s. Women could vote. Women could work outside the home. They could also pursue higher education to their heart's desire. Certainly, marriage and motherhood were encouraged and supported by society. But if a woman chose to take her life in another direction or put marriage off in pursuit of a career, she could do so. By all accounts, American women had it better than any other women in the world, and we still do. Women had achieved great success in many realms of American life, all before the third wave feminism of the 60s and 70s kicked in. But you're probably never going to hear about these women. We already saw, you hadn't heard of some of the greatest writers in history. Hannah More is very important historically, and most of you had never heard of her. Why? Because to acknowledge gains that women were making pre-1960s would invalidate the feminist movement as a whole. It would invalidate what it has become. And of course, they don't want that because then everybody now would be out of a job. Talking about these women would prove that women can achieve success on their own. We don't need an affirmative action program. I don't need you to hold back this guy so I can get ahead. I could do it myself. So how many of you have heard of Clare Boothe Luce? Good. Well, of course you've heard for now. I'm not surprised if you haven't, though. I certainly didn't know anything about her until I was almost halfway through my college career. One of my perfect stories about Mrs. Luce, one of my most favorite, really illustrates just how great this woman's work ethic was and how accomplished she was all on her own. My favorite story is how she got her first job. At 26 years old, she was newly divorced from an alcoholic husband, and she was the mother to a young daughter. She'd always had a dream of becoming a writer. She actually went to Condé Nast himself to ask for a job at one of his magazines. At the time, he owned both Vanity Fair and Vogue. Of course, he turned her down. She was kind of a socialite, a society girl. He thought maybe she would just go away. He didn't think she could cut it. So he said, well, I don't have anything now, but maybe come back in 3 weeks or so, clearly hoping she would disappear and not come back. After 3 weeks, Mrs. Luce turned up again, only to find that Mr. Nast was away in Europe, probably on purpose. On her way out, she noticed 3 empty desks. She asked another employee about them. She was told that some caption writers had recently left to get married and that those spaces were empty. Not one to waste any time, Mrs. Luce took off her jacket, she sat down at a desk, and she started working. Within 3 weeks, she was on the payroll, and within 4 years, she was managing editor of Vanity Fair magazine. Her achievements didn't stop there. In 1936, she wrote the iconic play, The Women, which is still performed today. They recently did a remake of the movie, but I don't really recommend it. The old movie's better. Mrs. Luce was also a foreign correspondent for Life magazine during World War II, and was also the first congresswoman from Connecticut in 1943. In 1953, she became ambassador to Italy under President Eisenhower. In 1983, she was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom by Ronald Reagan. What an accomplished woman. Not once did she call herself a victim. Not once did she rally for a leg up from the government or anyone else for that matter. She didn't paint herself as a victim. Rather, she worked hard and she succeeded because of it. Plain and simple. Okay, so fast forward to my college days. As a college student, it really baffled me how feminism and an organization like NOW, who claimed to represent every woman, seemed to represent every woman but me. I value traditional family and marriage. I also understood the need to be realistic about balancing your family and career. I also didn't see anything wrong with expecting men to treat me with some chivalry and respect. I also believed it was healthier to engage in serious dating relationships rather than the hookup culture that so many of my peers were taking part in. There were challenges to my beliefs at every turn, as I'm sure you have all experienced as well. If I spoke up in defense of the family, I was told I was homophobic, or I expected women to be barefoot in the kitchen rather than pursuing their careers. If I declined to engage in the hookup culture or take risks with alcohol, I was told that I was not liberated. I'm not liberated enough. And I should be engaging in these consequence-free sexual relationships, if you can call them relationships, just like some men do. This is according to feminists, guys. All this because I believed women should be able to choose freely between motherhood and family, and a full-time career, or some combination of all of those. What was so wrong with that? Wasn't the original aim of feminists to harness women's God-given right to choose their own paths? What are some of our favorite people? Today's young women are encouraged to follow the models of Hillary Clinton, Barbara Boxer, Nancy Pelosi, and others when considering the direction to take their lives. While some of these women are indeed accomplished, they are only a small piece of the puzzle, as conservative women are being largely left out of this conversation. Great women like Clare Boothe Luce herself are being omitted from the pages of high school and college history textbooks, all in an effort to push the feminist agenda. The truth is, conservative women just don't fit the mold of a feminist, according to NOW and other liberal groups. They don't pass the litmus test. Take a hardworking mom. She struck a great balance between work and family. She's very successful at work. She's won promotions, pay raises, and she somehow makes it all work in balancing her family. A feminist dream, right? She has it all. But wait, she's pro-life. She values her family, and she would work less hours if she could. Is she still a feminist? Today's feminists would say no. Jessica Valenti, who's a well-known modern feminist writer, she even said the following. I'm quoting her here. There is simply no way that you can advocate for the limitation of other women's rights, she's talking about abortion, and access to health care, and call yourself a feminist. Rather than assimilating to the notion that women need to act like men in order to succeed in the world, conservative women understand that their femininity is an asset. It's an important tool in your family and career. You can still be a strong woman and hold conservative ideals. Here's some good ones. We got Sarah Palin, Michelle Bachmann. These women have it all. They have a great career. They're very well educated. They have wonderful families. And they've both succeeded at blending these different areas of their lives. These women are everything feminists fought for. They should be celebrating them. At the very least, they could give them credit where credit is due and respect them for their accomplishments. And yet, these women were and continue to be persecuted by the feminists. Both were called anti-woman. Both suffered attacks on their intelligence and even attacks on their families. Here's some other good ones. Feminists just don't want the country to support these women. They don't want you to see them. They're obviously happy and content with their careers and their family lives. Clearly, they're not victims. These are not the women the feminist movement wants to hold up as examples of oppression. These are some of my favorites, Marsha Blackburn and Nikki Haley. Sarah Palin, Michelle Bachmann, Marsha Blackburn, and Nikki Haley never needed a leg up from the government. They don't need an affirmative action program. They were successful all on their own. As I continued on my college path, it became very clear to me that I did not fit the feminist mold either. I was really desperate to find others like me who believed what I believed and get connected to a support group that could support me in being who I was on campus. That's when I found YAF, and that's when I found the Clare Boothe Luce Policy Institute. The Luce Policy Institute was founded in 1993 to prepare and promote conservative women leaders. This year, we're celebrating our 20th anniversary, which is pretty exciting. This was an organization where I could feel at home with other conservative women who thought like I did. Here's some good ladies that we like. Through the Luce Institute, I was exposed to great women leaders like Babe Buchanan, who I know you're going to hear from today, Michelle Malkin, Phyllis Schlafly, Michelle Bachman, who I know you heard from yesterday. These women were everything that I wanted to be. Successful, smart. They had a strong faith. They valued their roles as wives and mothers, and they were outspokenly conservative. They had no fear. They were so confident in their beliefs. These were women that I wanted to be like and that I could relate to. So, my experiences in college have taught me a few things that conservative women already know, but liberal feminists either don't know or don't want you to know. First, women are already equal under the law in the eyes of the Constitution. Who's familiar with the 14th Amendment? That's good. Here it is. I won't read it all since you can read it there, but it contains an important bit of information known as the Equal Protection Clause. Very important. It reads as follows. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of laws. It's kind of a mouthful. Notice that it says person. That extends to all men and women, everybody. This basically means that laws can't be passed that are intrusive against women or anyone else for that fact. So, let's take a real-world example. The state of Virginia can't turn around and make a law that women can't walk on the sidewalk. Only men walk on the sidewalk. Women have to walk in that little awkward curb area. Men get the sidewalk, women don't. They can't do that. It would be illegal. It can't be done. So if a feminist argues with you that women aren't protected, they are wrong. Women are also entitled to fair pay from their employer. The Equal Pay Act was signed into law in 1963 and says that an employer may not pay lower wages to employees of one gender that it pays to employees of another for equal work at jobs that require equal skill, effort, and responsibility. Okay, so how many of you have heard that women only make 77 cents to the dollar? I think it's up to like 78 cents. Yeah? If there was really a wage gap that severe, don't you think there would be a legal uproar everywhere? If I believed women were being widely and unfairly discriminated against purely because of their gender, I would be right out there with them fighting it. But it's not happening. The wage gap data, this 77 cents on the dollar, I think it's 78 cents now, or 77 and a half, whatever. That data is generally a flat average. So we take all the collective salaries of the men in this room and average them. All the collective salaries of the women in this room and average them. And then we hold them up side by side. That's it. That's all it is. It doesn't take into account a lot of things. First, women work part-time more often and more frequently in their lives than men do. Of course, this lowers their pay from what a full-time earner would be making. Also, women leave the workforce a lot more frequently in their lifetime than men do. That also results in some fluctuating income. Women, by and large, also hold less of those Fortune 500 CEO jobs. This is mostly due to the fact that women don't want that 60-hour work week when they prefer to be home. That's not everybody. Some women CEOs are awesome, and if you want to go do that, you go right on ahead. I'll support you all the way. But my point is, there's a lot more to consider here than just the wage gap at face value, just this 77 cents on the dollar statement. Okay, number 2. Abstaining from the hookup culture and pursuing serious relationships that value marriage are healthier mentally, emotionally, and even physically in the long run. This goes for both women and men. Here you guys go again. Make sure you're awake. I can see you if you're falling asleep. If you haven't faced the hookup culture yet, you probably will. The hookup culture encourages young men and women to engage in casual relationships. This results in what's called hooking up. Hooking up can really be any level of physical intimacy that's supposed to be consequence-free. In other words, this is not a real relationship. This is a cultural phenomenon, directly resulting from the free love liberation encouraged by the radical feminists in the 60s and 70s. This culture calls for no commitment from anybody and tells women and men that they can move from partner to partner with no fear of emotional or mental ramifications of their actions. If some men can act this way, then why shouldn't women? This is the feminist, not me. That was the rationale of feminists who saw relationships and marriage as a concentration camp, per Betty Friedan. Young people are told that casual relationships and meaningless physical intimacy should be empowering, especially to women. The reality is quite the opposite. Young women who engage in hooking up are more likely to be depressed, suffer in their academics and work life, and have trouble forming those lasting relationships when the time comes that they really want them. A Princeton University study showed that 34% of girls engaging in these casual hookups hoped a relationship would evolve. 91% of girls admit to feelings of regret after the hookup has taken place. Common terms used by these girls to describe their feelings include guilt and the feeling of being used. What feminists don't want you to know is that serious traditional dating relationships and marriage have great benefits. They have positive effects on men and women alike. In general, married people tend to live longer. They make more money than single people or even those cohabitating. The Manhattan Institute even found that a married man can earn as much as 30% more than a single man with the same education. Feminists want you to think marriage is a trap. Married men and women are unhappy and depressed. Studies show that the reality is quite the opposite, thankfully. According to the Pew Research Center, only 24% of single people said they were very happy, compared to double that amount of married people with the same response. Now, certainly, marriage isn't for everyone, and certainly people will make mistakes, and that's okay. But research and science all suggest that marriage is a positive thing for women and men in America. Number 3, motherhood is a natural and healthy instinct that should be embraced. Despite what feminists refer to as a concentration camp, motherhood and the desire to have children and be home with them if you can is a totally normal feeling. The choice to have children and leave the workforce or choose part-time work over a career in order to spend more time with your family is not the oppressive act the feminists want you all to believe that it is. Science has proven over and over that women have an innate need and desire to spend time with their children, especially when the children are very young. According to the polling agency Public Agenda, 70% of parents with children under 5 agree that having a parent at home, if possible, is best. According to a recent Pew study, 12% of women with young children under the age of 5 were working full-time. Of women that do work full-time, many wish they could work less hours or not at all. This isn't to say that stay-at-home motherhood is an attainable choice for everyone. It may not be a choice you want to make. You might get bored. I'd get bored. A lot of people would get bored. That's okay. But the fact is, feminism pushes women to choose a career over marriage and family, and they demean those women that do embrace this desire. We saw this last year when Hillary Rosen, an Obama aide, attacked Ann Romney, who'd been a stay-at-home mom of 5 sons. Rosen said Ann Romney had never worked a day in her life. I don't know about you. I only have one brother. I don't know about you, but raising 5 sure sounds like a heck of a job to me. It isn't for feminists to dictate what women should or should not do with their lives. Wasn't the original aim of feminism to free women from being forced into lives that they didn't want? If feminism was really about choice, then why should a woman be put down or demeaned by the feminists who want to make the claim that she has given into the patriarchy? The feminists of the 60s and 70s believed that women should be one way and one way only, their way. Not much has changed in the last 50 years. Number 4, lastly, the feminist movement isn't just about moving forward with government intervention. It's about disadvantaging men and holding you all back. So really, this is all your fault, guys. This is why you need to care about radical feminism, too. The feminists have created a girl crisis to convince us that girls in our public schools need special initiative programs to improve their performances in the STEM topics, so math, science, technology, I think the E is engineering. This is because traditionally, women excel in subjects like creative writing and history, while guys are more successful at math and science. Rather than attribute these differences to biology and inherent differences in us all, feminists crusaded for girls to be given more attention in these subjects so they could equal guys in their grades and testing. So I want to ask this. If we need initiatives for women in math and science, where are the initiatives for guys to perform better in writing and history? It all goes back to the feminist mantra. If girls aren't doing as well as guys, they must be oppressed. It's that oppression thing again. So just recently, I was reading a publication by the American Association of University Women. They were just bemoaning the lack of women in the fields of computer technology. They seem to blatantly ignore that women have over half of college degrees, half of master's degrees, over half of PhDs, doctors, are women, and lawyers. Women are doing really well. I think that this speaks loudly to what the feminist movement really wants. Women are not truly equal, as they define it, until they have not only equaled men in their job performance, academic performance, but surpassed them. Here's something to think about. If feminists are so concerned with women surpassing men in STEM subjects and in the professional world, now let's think. How many times have you heard, there's not enough women CEOs? There's not enough women in Forbes. Okay. If women should be equal in this way, why not also protest the perceived inequality in construction, or garbage collecting, or plumbing? The list goes on. This is my favorite. So why can't the feminists accept that men and women are different? Being different does not mean we're oppressed. Rather, women and men just contribute to society in different but equally meaningful ways. Women complement men just as men complement women. Betty Friedan, Andrea Dworkin, Simone de Beauvoir are all gone. But I assure you that feminism is still alive and pushing their agenda of faux equality. Instead of Friedan, today's young women are hearing from Gloria Steinem, Kim Gandy, Eve Ensler, and Terry O'Neill, who's the current president of NOW. Their agenda has expanded to include gay marriage, lesbian rights, freedom from religion, and a whole host of other leftist banners. One of my favorite topics on their website is called Fighting the Right. That was another thing that somebody didn't believe me existed, so there it is. It's there. My message to you all today is don't be fooled by the feminist agenda that ultimately wants women to be what they think women should be and nothing else. There's no tolerance for women who marry, choose motherhood over a career, or value traditional relationships and family life. There's no room for you in the feminist movement. They're ignoring the fundamental differences between men and women, differences that enhance our relationships and strengthen our hearts and minds. Differences are not bad. Ladies, don't feel pressured to forego marriage and family if it's something that you really want. It's natural to want both of these things. Guys, don't fall for the myth that all men who are married or in serious relationships are unhappy and depressed. Research overwhelmingly shows the opposite. As you all know, conservatism values men and women for their capacity as individuals. It respects contributions that men and women make to the discussion of ideas and appreciates the leadership that both can offer. As you go back to school, as you get back on campus, don't be swayed from your beliefs as conservatives, and don't fall into the feminist trap. Thank you guys very much. I'll take a couple questions. These are my favorite pictures. Hi.
Hi, my name is Chris Hamilton, and I'm a student at Patrick Henry College. I have a question for you about no-fault divorce.
Okay.
No-fault divorce was one of the crowning achievements that feminists made in the 60s and 70s up through 2011 when New York adopted a no-fault divorce law. Mm-hmm. Can you comment a little bit on why the feminists wanted no-fault divorce and what it's doing to destroy the family today?
I can't speak too much on no-fault divorce. I'd love to talk to you a little bit later about that. If you let me give you my card, we can talk about that. But what I would like to talk about is how much that speaks to how these feminists devalue family. Family's oppressive, according to feminists. I don't think family's oppressive. You probably don't think that either. But they want you to think that. They don't care if you're a woman. They don't care if you're a man. Oh, well, 50% of marriages end in divorce, so that just proves everything. That just proves everything that marriage is terrible. Well, that's not true. Conservatives would look at that and say, but 50% of marriages last. And those 50%, I mean, they just want you to think that marriage is terrible. They want you to think that family is awful, and it's just not. But let me give you my card afterwards. I'd love to talk to you more about that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, my name is Kathleen Durso. I go to Texas Christian University.
Hi.
Research still shows that while 2/3 of the women in this room will be working for the men sitting next to us. And there's a lot of arguments that I agree with that say it's because of the internal barriers women put up for themselves rather than any institutional things. And I wanted to know what you thought of that argument.
I think that's a very interesting argument. And let me comment in this respect. I talk about a lot how women are different biologically. And there's a lot of scientific research to prove that. So I can say that as a fact, it's true. I think that when it comes to business, and even when it comes to personal interactions, how women conduct themselves and how women make certain decisions, totally different from men. It's completely different. One example that I always like to use about how women are different from men, which is going to speak to the question that you asked, is when somebody tells you that, oh, you just need a thick skin. You need to develop a thick skin, okay? I'm going to tell you right now, for the men in this room, that is going to be profoundly easier than it is for the women. And the reason for that is women want to be liked much more than men do. And so they're going to be a little quieter, perhaps, because they want to be liked. And I think women just have to find a way to turn those switches off from time to time. You don't have to stop being a woman. Please don't stop. Whatever, that's weird. You don't need to, wear the big shoulder pads. It's fine. Be a woman. Be as feminine as you want to be. But if you need to switch off those parts of your brain in order to get forward, do it. It's okay. It's really funny because I almost visualize a switch when I hear somebody coming at me with something that might make me feel like I'm wounded. Oh my gosh, I'm wounded emotionally. You don't like me. Oh my gosh, this is terrible. I have to turn it off, and it's hard. I think working for men is not a bad thing. Personally, I think that the men business owners out there who recognize the leadership that women can offer and recognize the working style and the contributions that women can make. I mean, this is a knowledge economy, guys. How many of you have ever heard that? Women excel at this knowledge economy stuff. And it's the male business owners and women business owners too who recognize that. They're the ones that are going to go the farthest. So, if you find yourself in the business world and you want to go ahead, you just have to turn these switches sometimes and figure out what works for you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Natalie Kuzmenko. I'm
Hi,
an intern at Clare, Boothe, Luce Policy Institute. And a lot of people in this room would agree that conservatives have a marketing message to women.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just wondering how you would address that problem and how we can appeal to more women in the future.
Sure. It's a great question. Thank you, Natalie. So, I know we always look back at the elections, all these post-mortem election stuff. I mean, this last election was a big one, right? So they do all these polls, and they want to talk about, oh my gosh, who is winning and what. So if you remember, this post-election poll, Romney ran away with most of the questions. I mean, by a long shot. I mean, who's going to fix the economy? Who's going to be the best at national defense? He ran away with that. But the one question that he lost on, and that conservatives consistently lose on, is who can feel my pain? Who understands me the most? This is because, and you all know this, leftist thought is not really thought, it's feeling, right? It's feeling. They're feeling. Women are by far coming from a more emotional perspective than men are, and that's not a bad thing. I'm not standing up here saying women are emotional, oh my God. Women are just a little bit more emotional. And so the best thing that conservatives can do is, number one, hold up these great women, these great conservative women. That's great, because then you've got the role models. The other thing that you can do, and all of you can do this when you go back to campus and you start discussing these ideas with your peers and you're trying to promote these conservative ideas, you have to tap into the emotional aspect of it. My first example is the pro-life movement. That's emotional on both sides. And by and large, we are winning that incredibly. But take something like taxes. Boring. Facts, logic, economics. It's very interesting, but if I am a working mom and I am running from place to place and dropping the kids off and picking the kids up and running to the grocery store and going to work, if I've got 5 seconds to hear the conservative side and the liberal side, and they're going on and on and on about, oh, these poor people, they need this, they blah, 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 whatever. They need entitlements, you know what they do. And then I got 5 seconds of a conservative saying, taxes. Who, if I'm not coming from any sort of perspective, who is going to be more appealing to me in that 5 seconds? It's going to be the liberal, purely because of the emotional aspect. So, one thing you can do, especially with an issue like taxes, is tap into the emotional side of it. And it's a challenge. You have to get a little bit creative with it. Instead of saying, hey, that single mom over there, we need to raise this rich guy's taxes to pay for this single mom because she needs it. Turn it around and say, okay, you see that single mom with her young son? How about we make it so she can keep more of the money that she is earning every day, working hard to provide for her son. She can buy her son a new winter coat every year, every winter, if she can keep more money. She can buy her child a good winter coat every year. There, you've just tapped into the emotional side of it. You just have to find a way to do that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, thank you for Hi, thank you for speaking today. My name is Joseph Lanoy from Brandeis University. During the past election, we heard about this war on women, and I saw your eyes roll there, but I just wanted to hear your thoughts about that because
Sure.
as an open conservative on my campus, that's all I heard about every single day, the
Sure.
feminists yelling at me saying I was oppressing women.
Oh, I love that. Do they call you anti-woman? Do they tell you that you don't have a right to talk about stuff because you're not a woman? I love that. That's my
Yes,
favorite.
they do tell me that.
That's my favorite. Okay, so let me touch on the war on women. First of all, if there was a war on women, do you think I would be standing up here speaking? No, definitely not, at least not according to the left. I think when the left grabs onto this war on women thing, it's clear that they're losing. They're losing and they know it. And so they got to pick on this war on women thing, war on women thing, war on women thing, because it's all they have left. Everything else isn't working. It's obvious it's not working. So they got to use this war on women stuff. Another thing you can think about, and this is fun. I like to, when the left used to get me on campus, I like to use humor. Humor is one of my favorite things. I have a very dry sense of humor, so it comes naturally to me. If it doesn't come naturally to you, it's okay. But my favorite thing to say, especially when a feminist comes up to you and say you're pro-life. I'm not saying, I'm not assuming, but
I am, but okay.
that's great. And they say, oh, well, you're not a woman, so you don't know anything about it. You can't comment on it. You don't matter. It's just this is a women's thing, right? It's always nice to remind them that Roe v. Wade, the cornerstone of the feminist movement, was decided by a court full of men. That's fun. Because they only care when you're with them. It doesn't, you have to agree with them. Let me see, war on women. There's so much to say about the war on women. It's just absolutely ridiculous. And I don't know if I can really say any more than that. I mean, if there was a war on women, we wouldn't have all the great women speakers that are speaking at YAF this week. We just wouldn't have them. It's not true. But yeah, that pro-life one, that's a good one. Whip
Thank
that
you.
one out sometime. Thank you guys all very much.